What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, your host, once again bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take. My opinion will be posted on the YouTube airwaves. I've been doing this since January of last year, so about a year now. Doing another episode of the Thomas Take where I'm going to give my opinion on what should the Cleveland Browns do heading into the 2017 offseason. They carry the first overall draft choice in the 2017 NFL Draft. They carry the 12th overall draft choice in the 2017 NFL Draft. What would I do if I was sitting in the GM chair in Cleveland at the Cleveland Browns, for the Cleveland Browns? What would Kevin Costner / Ryan Thomas do upon on draft day? I got a lot of ideas as far as what they should do heading into the 2017 season, or the 2017 draft. There's a lot of different directions that they could go in. They could decide to draft a quarterback first overall. Much like last year, I don't see them doing that. I see them going in the direction of taking a defensive player. And obviously, Myles Garrett would be the first guy that comes to mind. That would be the guy that I would take if I were to not trade the first overall selection. If there's a guy out there that I like, that I'd like to have, and while getting multiple draft choices, trading down would be a scenario in which I would at least explore if I were the Cleveland Browns. But say they stand pat, first overall, I'd go with Myles Garrett, first overall pick, Texas A&M, great pass rusher, the best pass rusher in this class, which says a lot because there's quite a few good ones. I'd go with Myles Garrett. They need to build on the defensive side of the ball. Definitely Myles Garrett could be one of those pieces for them in the long-term future that would be a mainstay defensive cornerstone type player. They added the linebacker from the Patriots this past season, I should say. So that was a interesting move that they were able to make a trade for a guy like Jamie Collins, bring him in, and then add Myles Garrett to that defensive core. I would go with that tandem. That'd be a tandem that you'd be able to build your defense around for many years to come. 12th overall is where things get interesting. What would they do 12th overall? Now, they don't have a quarterback. Robert Griffin III was an experiment that they took a chance on. He had injuries, as he always has, but in limited playing time, he did show signs of his former self. So the jury is still out on him. The jury is still out on whether, he is the long-term solution. I don't think he is. I think he was a stopgap solution that could easily cut him and move on, no bones off their back, go into another direction at the quarterback position. And that is where I would go in at 12th overall. Not by selecting a Mitch Trubisky, not by selecting a Mahomes or a Deshaun Watson. I would really hone in on Jimmy Garoppolo as a definite franchise quarterback in the National Football League. I consider him to be one. I think he's a great quarterback that on the right team could be even better than he was on the Patriots. Is that team Cleveland? No. Out of all the fits that would probably be the worst fit, it's probably Cleveland for sure. But that's the team that would need him the most. And that's the team that New England would get the most compensation, the biggest return on a player like a Jimmy Garoppolo. So that would be win-win scenario for both the Patriots and the Browns. The Patriots are saying that they were looking to trade him, but, that there's some room for discussion there as to whether they will or whether they won't, as to whether they should or whether they shouldn't. And if I was Cleveland, I would knock their socks off, offer them the 12th overall selection, get Jimmy Garoppolo back in return, and wash my hands of it, and bring in Jimmy Garoppolo as the future of the Cleveland Browns. One reason why I think the Patriots would make this trade with Cleveland, besides the compensation, is due to the fact that Bill Belichick was the former coach of the Cleveland Browns. He has a soft spot for Cleveland. He wouldn't send Jimmy Garoppolo to a team that wouldn't be on his, hopeful list. And Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't become an immediate threat to the New England Patriots if they were to trade him to the Cleveland Browns. It'd be smart, competition-wise, for him to go to Cleveland as opposed to the Houston Texans or a team like that. So Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd be all in. I probably would have already made that trade if I was the Cleveland Browns. They need something to be excited about. It's been a long time coming that the Cleveland Browns have had something to build off of. And Jimmy Garoppolo and Myles Jarrett, defensive pass rushing cornerstone, a franchise quarterback, a guy for the future. Then you have 5 picks in the top. You used one of the picks on a trade. You used one of the picks on a player. You have 3 other selections, I believe, in the top 60. So that would allow them to still have those 3 selections to choose, whatever players or whatever options that they decide. They'd be able to, apply talent to their team because really they don't have much. There's great running backs in this year's draft class. I'm not sold on Isaiah Crowell. I'm more sold on Duke Johnson Jr. as the future running back for the team. But I wouldn't scoff at a guy like Foreman from Texas. I wouldn't scoff at him whatsoever. So that could be an option for them in the middle round, second and third round. Wide receiver position is obviously a definite need. Josh Gordon, the status of him is up in the air, but having a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo throwing to a healthy, focused Josh Gordon would be extremely beneficial for the future of their team if Josh Gordon gets his head out of his butt and gets his stuff together. Terrell Pryor was decent last year as the wide receiver, as a converted quarterback wide receiver. Last year he did a lot better than I thought he would, a lot better than we all thought he would. So they do have him. He's on a contract year, I believe, so they'll probably look to bring him back. He's an Ohio State, former quarterback, Ohio guy through and through, so I would anticipate that they would bring him back. I would do whatever I could to bring him back. But Cleveland still has a lot of holes, but getting a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo would put them in the conversation as a team that is looking to compete, looking to contend, not even for a playoff spot, but just in general, as opposed to having the Cody Kesslers and Robert Griffin IIIs and Josh McCowns of the world. Josh McCown made a big statement saying that he would approve of Jimmy Garoppolo heading to Cleveland. So that was another wrinkle in this whole discussion that definitely needs to be considered. I was the Cleveland Browns. I would bring him in. 12th overall is high. You are trading a first-round pick, but you're trading a first-round pick for the game's most important position, and Jimmy Garoppolo showed that he could be that guy in the right system. And obviously, it's not set in stone. It's a chance. It's a risk trading a 12th overall pick for a guy that has played limited amounts of time as a starting quarterback in this league. But as opposed to Mitch Trubisky, as opposed to Deshaun Watson, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the best quarterback option available. I would take my chances on a guy that has already played in the NFL rather than taking a chance on a guy that has yet to play an NFL snap. So, very interesting discussion, for sure. I think that Cleveland is at a point right now where they have a lot of options. They might have finished 1-15 last year. They might have been a laughing stock to the National Football League last year, but I like their chances of eventually becoming a competitive team. I'm high on Hugh Jackson, great offensive coach, got too little amount of time to prove himself, way too short amount of time to prove himself in Oakland, and giving him the shot in Cleveland was warranted, and not writing him off as a head coach heading into his second season was warranted. Virtually no talent on this roster whatsoever allowed the Cleveland Browns to become a 1-15 team, and the game in which they did win this past season, Hugh Jackson was carried off the field, so there's a mutual respect there between the players and the coaches, and I would anticipate that, year 2 will be a lot better than year 1 if the moves are made that I would make for the Cleveland Browns heading into the season. I like the chances of Jimmy Garoppolo being that guy for the Cleveland Browns. Great arm, great anticipation on his throws, smart quarterback. He showed athleticism. He's a little bit mobile, definitely more athletic than Tom Brady. but he's not Tom Brady yet, obviously. So could he be a dominant quarterback in this league? I think so. I'm high on him. I like him a lot. I liked what I saw. He played Arizona on primetime, picked them apart, and played very well in the absence of Tom Brady. He had that injury heading into the week against Buffalo. I think if he's in that game, they beat Buffalo, and that's coming from a Buffalo Bills fan. So definitely interesting. If New England decides to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, that would make Jacoby Brissett the heir apparent to Tom Brady. I don't know how long that plan would stick, but Jacoby Brissett has some things about him that are decent as well. I think that New England would actually look to draft a quarterback once again heading into this year's draft, or maybe signing one that is coming off a rookie contract that did not get a lot of playing time, like Jimmy Garoppolo did. So that is my take on what the Cleveland Browns should do in the 2017 offseason. Myles Jarrett, number 1, heading to Cleveland, the best pass rusher in this draft, and that's a high compliment because there are a lot of good pass rushers in this draft. I'd put him at number 1. I'd put Solomon Thomas at number 2, even though I'm very high on Solomon Thomas. He's my number 1 player besides Myles Jarrett, on my defensive board, which I'm going to release very shortly. So keep those eyes peeled for that on Facebook. Keep your ears open on YouTube. Thomas Take Sports Podcast is the channel. Like my Facebook page at Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I got a lot of awesome shows coming, a lot of awesome guests joining me on the show heading into this crazy, wild 2017 NFL offseason. Myles Jarrett at number 1. Jimmy Garoppolo sending that 12th overall selection to the New England Patriots for the Patriots backup quarterback. That is what I would do if I were the GM of the Cleveland Browns. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was today's edition of the Thomas Take. Tune in for more in the coming days.